In this story, we meet 5 sisters named Mala, Noah, Hagla, Milka, and Tirzah. Look at those cute little beans. And when we meet them, their father has just died. And these sisters don't have what it takes in this time period to be able to provide for themselves. Because they aren't men, and because they don't have husbands, they don't have land or access to any of their inheritance. So they actually go to Moses. And they tell him, hey, we think we deserve the inheritance of our fathers, and this distinction isn't fair to women like us. And Moses is like, that makes sense, but let me ask God. So Moses goes and he asks God, and God is like, yeah, duh. And Moses reports back to them and declares that women should be able to receive an inheritance, which is huge in this time period. Now, it's still only available if they don't have brothers, but it's still progress in this story. And we see the way that together these sisters see what is just and make the change that they know is fair in their lives. Good job, Mala, Noah, Hagla, Milka, and Tirzah. You go.
Yes! Heck yeah!
That's really hard. I think that the moments that I've most pondered if I have the courage to do something like that, it's often taken me days or weeks or months to decide, and I know that sometimes when I take that long to decide or to get the courage that I don't do anything.
Standing up for change and advocating for yourself can be rather daunting. This story shows that it's not necessarily the easiest thing to do. You have to stand up and tell someone that you think they are wrong, and that's not easy. But it can be quite meaningful because it can often make a big difference. It did in this story, and it has in so many stories that we know. And the reason why is because change is ever present if we have the courage to keep it at the forefront of our actions.
I think I would, depending on the situation and depending on how much, if I stood up, would it make a difference, or if I stood up, would it put me in jeopardy of something that could hurt me?
I think I would not have courage to do it by myself. I think if I had 5 sisters to do it with me, it would be a lot less scary. Yeah, or just other people, so it's not just me. Because then, I think a lot of times if it's just me or just one person asking for something to change, people are going to be like, oh, it's one person. Probably it's not a real issue, this person just complains a lot. But if there's 5 people all saying the same thing, people are going to pay attention, more likely.
I was going to this school in Tucson and trying to start a LGBT club, and the administration just did not want to help provide any resources to get it started. And it was, eventually I found an advisor and got it, but it was a very long process of being like, hey, we need these resources at this school. We need this space because this community also exists here. And not having that be listened to was really, really frustrating.
I think that one of the hardest things for me is I frequently notice the way men and women are treated differently in the world. And I notice when I'm treated differently for being a woman, and I notice what it's like to be in spaces that are for men and how different it feels to be there as a woman. And it's hard to bring those concerns to men because they don't often see it as much as I do. And that can make it feel like it's not real. But I think about it and I watch it and observe it a lot. So that's a place that frequently comes up in my own life.
In regards to like mental health and like in the church and like knowing, having, it would be nice to like have like a pastor or something who like knew how to like appropriately like engage with like knowing how to like find resources for me and not me having to teach them as I was going through it.
Like when I was a child, a lot of times adults did not take what I was saying seriously, or they didn't want to listen to what I was saying because I was a kid, which, okay, I mean, you are an adult, you've lived your life, you can choose not to listen to what a kid is saying, but I think just completely discounting things that young people say is not a good way to go.
I think it really gives me the ability to kind of ground myself and clear my head and then decide how I can create change. I think it's more that it gives me, kind of the brain space that I need to process how to act than anything.
Sometimes I feel like the biggest thing that prayer does is give space for intentional thought, a sort of thought that connects us to others rather than isolates us from others. And that's what I most want to consider when I consider if it's time to change and if it's time for me to be part of the action of something changing.
Prayer for me is an avenue in which I ask for guidance about the steps that I take in my life. And I think prayer for me guides me in the changes that have happened in my life. Prayer is something that I use to help me think through my steps, and I ask through prayer for a sort of illumination of the path that I am to take.
I think for me, prayer is like one of the first steps I like go to. Is it like helps ground me in the understanding understanding why I'm wanting to create change, and if it's my role to create the change or if it's someone else's role to create the change.
I think it's similar to what I was saying earlier about how usually I'm not praying for something to change, I'm praying for the things I need to help that change happen, because I know leaving it completely up to God, sometimes that's all you can do, but I believe that we have to put the momentum behind it since we're here, and if something we need to change here isn't changing and we're asking for God's help, maybe God can help guide us, but we still have to start walking forwards,
I think in the last few years, the more diverse groups of people that I've been exposed to, listening to them and their needs and seeing the way that they've advocated for themselves has not only educated me on the importance of that advocacy, but also encouraged me to help in the ways that I can and amplify those needs.
I think it's really linked to the question previously. I've been most inspired by listening to other women talk about the ways they've advocated for change, or the way that they affirm other people's experiences. Those are the times that I've most been inspired by change, is listening to other people who affirm the experiences of those who want change.
I would say I had a friend who started this campaign called Fossil Free UMC, and it was about divesting from companies that used fossil fuels, and how as a corporation if we divest from companies that use fossil fuels, we can slowly create a change of creation care by where we put our money. And for me, that was a very important realization of where you put your money, where your mouth is, and that by doing that, it shows the younger generations and people, the grandkids, that what you can do now will help the next generations.
It can be quite difficult to decide when to push and when to wait. There are many instances in the Bible of people being told to wait, and to wait prayerfully. And so I think that if we allow ourselves to understand that, as I think of it, the correct time for something will always present itself, I think it isn't really a choice between waiting and doing. I think that the waiting can very much be part of the doing. And if we wait prayerfully, the right time will present itself to make change.
I think that that's what prayer is for, is figuring out if it's the right time, and if you're the right person. And I think you also have to do some mental calculations about the harm that's present and how much harm continues if you are trying to be patient and wait for change, or if you will do more harm in pushing forward to make change in a time where it may not be right or possible. And I have a really hard time with that. I find patience frustrating, and I'm not sure I always get it right, but I think that kind of doing the mental calculation about harm and the energy you have, and if you're the right person, can be helpful.
I think as soon as anybody's being harmed, which really depends on how you define harm. So I think most of the time, it's more of okay, is it smarter to be patient right now? And more often than not, it's no, this is something that needs to be talked about or acted upon.
When it's an issue, a cause related to something that's not of my ethnic background, I feel it's better for me to give of my money and my time in a way that's useful so that they can amplify their voice. Because I feel like it's more powerful coming from someone who knows the injustice and knows how it affects them, instead of coming from someone who is white and does not know the emotional toll of what they've gone through.
I mean, on a small scale, I have never like been in charge of a big group trying to change something, so I don't have experience with that. But on a small scale, like individual people, usually I will ask once about something and give the person time, because maybe they're busy, maybe they like didn't understand what I was asking. I don't know. There might be a reason that nothing is changing yet. But you know, I wait a little bit. I try and be patient at first, and if it's an urgent thing, like it's harming somebody, I'm not going to be patient very long, because that, you know, maybe it's going to give the person who needs to do the changing a little more time.
Yeah, what can you do about the injustices you see in your life?